Each firewall device must have its own set of configuration rules and regulating its action. Good policy and practice dictates that whether a filtering router, a bastion host, or a firewall implementation must have its own set of configuration rules. Configuration of firewall policies can be complex and difficult. It's very much an art as much as it is a science. Each configuration rule must be carefully crafted, debugged, tested, and sorted to make sure that you're allowing the appropriate traffic in and preventing the traffic that you don't want. Keep in mind one thing, that when security rules conflict with the performance of business, we often lose out and security often loses out. So you're not going to be able to put a very restricted device in there. You have to be adapted to business needs. Best practices for firewalls: all traffic from trusted networks should be allowed out. Firewall devices is never directly accessible from the public network. It should be managed only from internal network IP addresses. STMP data is allowed to pass through the firewall but should be routed to a well-configured gateway or filter and route message traffic securely. All ICMP data should be denied. Telnet access to internal servers should be blocked. Web services are offered outside the firewall. HTTP traffic should be denied from reaching your internal network. You should use some sort of proxy server or proxy access or DMZ architecture. Firewalls operate by examining data packets and performing a comparison with some predetermined logic rules. So the rules have to be appropriate and they have to be managed. This logical set is most commonly referred to as firewall rules or rule base or firewall logic. Most firewalls use packet header information to determine whether or not that particular packet should be allowed to pass through or should be dropped. Excuse me. Here's an example of a network configuration, and what we have here again is an untrusted network, external filtering router, external IP address, internal IP address, a switch which is going to push data that is directed towards the DMZ to proxy servers or web servers or STMP, and then they're using an internal filtering router which is acting as a proxy. Right, for our trusted network, we have some internal servers, firewall administrators, some external IP addresses using network address translation table, using two different IP address schematics. Typical example of a network configuration. Some well-known port numbers that you should be familiar with. Looking at some port numbers in the particular protocols that they use. Right, you should be familiar with these. These are very easily identifiable and are frequently used, and you can also look these up on the internet anywhere. Here's a firewall inbound interface rule set that I want to just brush through real quick, and you're looking for some key rules here. First off, rule number 1 says that 10.10.10.0 from any source, any destination, any port going anywhere is denied. So we will never allow this internal IP address, internal IP address to connect to any internal IP for any reason. All right, and then you can breeze through these, any's, and we can use any's. We're going to deny looking at a particular firewall, and usually firewalls are configured. This particular one, 10.10.10.1, is probably a router, and this is probably your firewall, or vice versa. So we're going to deny access to that. We're also going to deny them access to anything internally. But I want to draw your attention to the last rule. The last rule is absolutely important because this is the catch-all rule. Last rule on your firewall table should be any source address, any source port, looking for any destination address on any destination port, we deny. And what that basically says is, if I don't have a rule for it, I'm going to deny it. If I haven't written a specific rule for a specific type of transaction or specific type of communication, then it is going to be denied. Now you can imagine the other side of the coin is we could do this any allow, which says, hey, if I haven't written a rule for it, we're going to allow it in anyway, which is kind of counterintuitive. So to make our firewall absolutely secure, or as secure as we can, our last rule should be the catch-all any deny. Anything I haven't written a rule for, we have to deny access to it. And you're going to see again external filtering firewall outbound interface rule set, right? Source addresses going anywhere, so forth and so on. Again, last rule, anything that I have not written a rule for, we must deny that. So summary, technology from two different filtering to dynamic stateful inspection. You want to make sure that you appropriately select the firewall that's going to make the most sense for your organization. No two organizations are going to be configured the same way, and therefore the architecture really depends on the needs of the network and the needs of the organization. All these devices need to be managed.